As the coronavirus sweeps across the face of our planet, it's scary how quickly the things that we look to for our security, be it a stable economy or a guaranteed job or schools for our kids or food on the shelves or even socialising with friends, are just kind of disappearing before our eyes. And so what now? Well, even if we've spent our entire lives rejecting any notion of God, we might find that we're haunted with a question that just niggles away in the back of our minds. Where is God in the face of the coronavirus? If there is a God, where is he? Well, the Bible offers us three assurances as we look out on a world racked with anxiety and uncertainty. Firstly, God, who is good, is in control in our suffering, which means there is meaning behind it all. Here's the problem. If we reject God in the face of the coronavirus, if we buy into a secular humanist worldview and we say that God doesn't exist, and if we follow that worldview to its logical conclusion, then we have to come to terms with meaningless suffering. Ultimately, without God, there is no significance to human life. We're just a bundle of atoms floating around, and we're currently being hurt by another bundle of atoms. But it doesn't feel like that, does it? Because when something like coronavirus comes around, we instinctively feel so much more than just walking computers. We hurt, we grieve, we can't understand it. Making suffering meaningless doesn't make it any better. But the God of the Bible is one who is sovereignly in control, even in the face of suffering. In the Bible we read these words, "Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom." Point being, as creator, he's not lost control. And God is also good. We read elsewhere in the Bible that the Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all that he's made. God is in control and he's good. Now, that doesn't make it any easier to come to terms with why he's allowing something like coronavirus, but it does suggest that there is meaning to what's going on, even if we can't begin to fathom what that might be, and that meaning ultimately is good. God hasn't let go of the tiller. He's not scratching his head trying to work out how to deal with this pandemic, and nor is he just leaving us to it, kind of waiting to see how we deal with the problem. He is completely in control, steering the whole of human history, which means that our suffering isn't meaningless. There is a purpose behind what's going on. But not just that, we can't just leave it there. Secondly, God stands with us in our suffering, which means there is comfort in the midst of it. The good God of the Bible, although he is sovereignly in control, he's not distant and far off, unable to relate to us. In fact, the message of the Bible is that God took the ultimate step to relate to us by becoming one of us, a human, in the person of Jesus, and so entered and experienced the mess and suffering and brokenness of our world firsthand. If you read the true accounts of Jesus' life in the New Testament, you'll quickly see that Jesus, the Son of God, knew what it was like to suffer. He faced racism and thirst and hunger and homelessness and asylum. He was persecuted. One of his best friends died. He endured extreme loneliness, torture, and a prolonged execution. He wept when he saw suffering. You read the Bible and you see that here is one who knows how we feel in our suffering, which means there is great comfort for hurting and anxious people. And not only that, you see a God who promises to be with us in our suffering, no matter how long we've been self-isolating. In the Bible we read these familiar words, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." There is great comfort knowing that even when we're physically cut off from everyone else around us, or even if we're struggling to breathe on a ventilator in a quiet hospital ward, God never leaves us or forsakes us. He's in control in our suffering. He stands with us in our suffering. But that's not all. Because finally, wonderfully, God knows the end of the story, which means there is hope for the future. The story of the Bible is that this world, broken as it is not the end of the story. The message of the Bible is a wonderful journey which finishes with all things being restored. No more suffering, no more tears, no more anxiety, no more deadly pandemics, no more panic buying and job losses, no more loneliness, no more mourning loved ones, the Bible describes a day when all of that will be gone and we can be with God forever in paradise. Now, how do we know that that isn't just kind of pie in the sky stuff, a nice fairy tale to help us feel better when the chips are down? Because the Bible tells us that Jesus rose from the dead. That Jesus journeyed through suffering of the worst kind, enduring a criminal's death on a cross to pay the penalty for our willful rebellion against God. But that he didn't stay dead. That he rose again 3 days later, meaning that for all who believe in him, there is hope, real, lasting hope for the future. Jesus says in John's Gospel, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die." And that's the hope of the Bible, that because Jesus is alive, there is lasting hope for all who believe in him. Hope even in the face of the coronavirus, because through trusting in Jesus, even death only serves us to go to be with God in paradise forever. And so as we sit and as we scroll through the relentless 24-hour news cycle, and as we feel the weight of an anxious world, and perhaps in the back of our minds we ask, where is God in the face of this pandemic? Remember this: God is in control even in our suffering, which means there is meaning behind it all. God is standing with us in our suffering, which means there is comfort in the midst of it. And God knows the end of the story, which means there is hope for the future. If you'd like to find out more about this God and the wonderful message of Jesus, then head to dundonald.org. You can tune in on Sundays to our online church content, access lots of other free resources you might find helpful, or get in touch with info@dundonald.org for any other questions.